it just feels like alchemy. It's kind of arbitrary and it's a little overly complicated. And hi, I'm Martin. I build creative tools and I share my journey here. At the start of the week, I set myself the goal to test my newly written render engine using a small real-world project. So over the course of the last couple of weeks, I've been building a little 2D WebGL render engine, and now that it's finally done, I would like to start applying it to real projects, and I would like to start with a small project. What I came up with is that I will take the gradient generator tool that I built earlier this year and rebuild it using the new render engine. So to tell you a little bit about that project, that's like a little free web tool that lets you create animated gradients easily. And then anyway, I figured I'm gonna rebuild that tool because the version that exists online right now was kind of built as a prototype. So to give you a visual, I would like you to think of that fairy tale with the three pigs, where the first pig built a house out of straw and the last pig build a house out of stone. And when you think of my existing gradient tool, I would like you to think of a house of straw. The code is messy, the code is fragile, everything is very prone to falling apart. So I thought this would be a win-win. I would be able to give this project some love and rebuild it with a stronger foundation using the render engine. And at the same time, I would be able to stress test my render engine and find bugs and sort of help it grow in that way. And so Monday or Tuesday, I open up the code base of that gradient generator tool that I want to rebuild, and everything is mysterious. I mean, it's messy too and fragile, but more than that, it's mysterious. And I promise I'm gonna describe exactly what I mean by that in a second, but just so you understand sort of the stakes here, the problem that's forming is I have built many tools. Some of them are prototypes that never saw the light of day, some I'm building right now, and some little gimmicky tools I've put online and they exist and are getting used by some people. And out of all of my little productions, my gradient tool has been the most promising and successful, and I think that comes down to 3 reasons. The first of which being, it actually solves a real problem that people have. If you just Google for animated gradient tool or gradient generator or something like that, you're gonna get tons of examples. There's many tools. It's almost like its own little market. There's many tutorials for how to create such visuals in After Effects. It's a popular aesthetic, and there is a certain need to make that sort of stuff easier. And now secondly, the project is limited in scope. So I have some other things brewing that are more ambitious, where I cannot really hope as a single person to deliver a finished, polished product. I can only make a good prototype, if you will. But here, this is sort of the right size of a project for me to be able to deliver a fully polished, finished thing. Which is nice. That's good. And finally, I quite like my gradient generator tool. I think it's doing something novel, and I think it has an interesting mechanic, and so I think it shows some promise. And also, amongst all of my tools, it is the one that gets the most consistent, regular traffic. So that's nice. And so I would love to double down on that tool. It's a nice little thing to demonstrate what I do. And in fact, I would like to make the best animated gradient tool in the world. Now that sounds a little bit silly, but I guess what I mean by that is that if you think of the platonic ideal of an animated gradient generator, then how I would imagine that is a tool that you open as a designer because you want to create an animated gradient, and it offers you just the right amount of control. So you have not too much control so that you have to labor and work very hard to produce your visual, but not too little so that it feels like you're just choosing stock imagery, the right amount. And you use it, and there's no learning curve. It just comes natural. The gradients it generates are beautiful and dynamic, and on top of all that, the tool is delightful. You just enjoy using it. In fact, you you keep using it even when you don't have to anymore. So that's the best animated gradient tool in the world. That's my idea of it, and I would like to build that. I probably won't, but that's the North Star. We're aiming for something. Okay, so now that you know all this, let's get back to me opening the code base, and the code is mysterious. Now let me explain to you what mysterious is so that you appreciate the problem even more. Basically, my tool takes certain inputs. Most importantly, you sort of input the colors that you want to see appear in the gradient. And then it uses those inputs and it generates visuals. And the process by which it does that is a graphics pipeline that contains multiple steps that are all rather arbitrary and overly complicated. And when you look at them, they sort of, it feels like alchemy. Let me tell you exactly what it does. So I take the color inputs and I map them to color particles in 3D space that are moving along the trajectory of a Lissajous knot, which is a certain kind of mathematical figure. Now I construct a manifold in 3D space that is being used to sample color values in space which are interpolated between the color particles. And then that manifold gets flattened out and produces the final image. Now, if that didn't make very much sense, don't worry, it doesn't. But the point is just it's a complicated procedure, and it's not necessarily something you can justify. Like it's not like there's like an obvious way to create animated gradients, but if there was, probably wouldn't be that. And moreover, the process by which I arrived at this specific algorithm was basically dark magic. I was like experimenting for days and days, working on the code, trying out random things that came to my mind, tweaking little like magical number values in my code that just sort of exist as constants right now, until I got to something that feels like it consistently produces pleasant gradients. And now you're in a position to appreciate the problem. So on the one side, I have this North Star. I want to make the best animated gradient tool in the world. And on the other hand, I have a broken compass. Like the tool itself is like the algorithm is deeply mysterious, and it's very unclear how to improve it because it doesn't make sense why it's good in the first place. Like the whole thing is just whatever. So I set to rebuild that tool, and while I'm doing that, I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, this is very mysterious. Let me try to like simplify it a little bit. Let's try to make the algorithm a little more straightforward, a little simpler, a little more streamlined. Let's take some steps out maybe. And so I got drawn into a whole rabbit hole doing that. I started experimenting again and trying to simplify. And at the end of the week, I had something that was simpler. And then I figured, okay, I'm going to compare it to what I already had before. And turns out I made it worse. Like when you put two gradients side by side, one created with the new tool and one created with the old tool, the old tool just looks more pleasant. Okay, so let's see what we can learn from this week. Let's see what the teachings are here. Number one, the most important one is I got distracted, and that was not good. The goal was to rebuild what I already had with the new render engine, to like create a better foundation and more stable code, not ultimately improve the tool, which is a nice side quest and which is something I want to do, but that was not the goal for this week. And because I tried to improve the tool, I ended up not actually finishing my goal. And secondly, even if the goal is to improve the gradient generator, this is not the way to do it, because I tried to fix the dark magic by doing more dark magic. I was still just sort of experimenting, and I think that if I do want to improve my gradient tool, and if I do want to move towards that North Star, the way to do it is to have a more systematic framework. So that should involve user feedback, and that should involve me pulling together like a data set of good examples, what is a good gradient, sort of defining that and having something to work against. And so the goal for next week will be to finish what I failed at this week, which is to simply rebuild the existing gradient tool, create like a literal copy with the mysterious algorithm and all, leave it as is, just with better code. And maybe, if there's spare time, other things as well, but we'll see about that. Anyway, check back in next week and let's see how I did.